What's up, guys? We're Horizon X. Hello, everyone. Today, I would like to introduce to you the mermaid. Let's start by showing everyone a short video about mermaids from August 7, 2021.
That's crazy. This is crazy. I heard it. I heard it. I hear it. Oh my God.
This is a young American fisherman, Ryan Coleman, who heard what sounded like a mermaid's call while at sea. Some netizens also claim that they heard a mermaid saying, "Jump for me," twice. It really makes us wonder if it was truly a mermaid calling out. Now, let's talk about the story of mermaids. The legend of the mermaid is widespread all around the world, especially in Europe. But in Asia, they're not as common. Has this magical creature, which has been passed down through the world, ever truly existed? Next, let me tell you about the mermaid legend. First, the most famous mermaid in Europe is the sea monster Syrinx from Greek mythology. In Homer's epic Odyssey, it's said the Sirens lived on a tiny island near Sicily, a place covered in white bones. Why all the bones? It was because Sirens ate people. Their job? Using their enchanting songs, causing the sailors to lose their senses and steer the ship toward the island. Once the ship crashed and sank, the sailors would fall into the water, swim toward the island, and then the Sirens would eat them. Since mermaids charm sailors and sailors are predominantly male, it makes sense to think mermaids are female. But the legend shocked everyone. Mermaids could actually harm people or even eat them. But was there really no one who could resist such terrifying mermaids? However, an individual did manage to do so. A musician from Greek mythology, Orpheus. He was really good at playing the lyre. When he sailed through the waters inhabited by the Sirens began to sing to lure him in. But Orpheus started playing his lyre, and the enchanting sound of his music mesmerized the Sirens instead, allowing him to pass safely. His skill with the lyre was so amazing that his wife fell in love with him because of his music. They were deeply in love. But on their wedding day, his wife was bitten by a venomous snake and died. Devastated, Orpheus descended into the underworld to plead with Hades, the god of the dead. He played his lyre, and the music moved Hades so profoundly that Hades agreed to bring his wife back to life. But Hades made one condition clear. When you take your wife back to the living world, you must not look back. As Orpheus walked ahead, his wife's soul followed behind, but he could hear nothing and began to doubt. Was she really following him? Unable to resist, he turned around to check, and when he did, his wife fell back into the abyss. She couldn't be revived again, and even playing another song wouldn't change that. Not even Hades could fix that. After returning to the living world, he was overwhelmed with grief. He drank every day, and eventually he was killed by Dionysus. This became one of the most famous tragic stories in Greek mythology. With his skill at the lyre, he could have easily ruled the universe. All he needed to do was play a song for Zeus, and even Zeus might have been enchanted. Beyond Greek mythology, Germany has a very similar legend. In German mythology, the mermaid is called Lorelei. She sits on a giant rock in the Rhine River with golden hair, singing songs to enchant passing sailors. The sailors, entranced, would steer their ships into the rocks, which would shatter into pieces. It's not mentioned whether the sailors were eaten, but one thing's for sure, her actions were absolutely evil. It seems that no matter where you go, mermaids are always symbols of disaster, which is why they are considered bad omens. Now, let me introduce a gentler mermaid legend from Europe, Ireland's mermaids. In Ireland, they're called Merrow, which means singer of the sea. Merrows can be male or female and both have green hair, green tails, and semi-transparent webbing on their fingers, like fins. Female Merrows can marry humans, but their children are quite unique. These kids have scales on their bodies and webbed hands. In Norway, mermaids have a unique ability that isn't mentioned in other countries. They can predict the future. They are seen as prophets. and whatever a mermaid tells you is something that's about to happen. This is the entire mermaid system in Europe. In this system, mermaids are creatures with the upper body of a beautiful woman and the lower body of a fishtail. They're known for their singing, using their voices to enchant humans, and often bring disaster, either by eating people or causing calamity. So what about mermaids in Asia? Let's take a look, starting with Japan. The earliest record of mermaids in Japan comes from an ancient text called Nihon Shoki, the Chronicles of Japan. It says that in 619 AD, which is about 1400 years ago, Japanese fishermen captured mermaids twice, once in April and once in July. These mermaids were less than a meter long, with a human-like upper body and a fishtail. Upon hearing the news, Prince Shotoku rushed to the scene to pay respects to the mermaid. This was because, in Japanese tradition, the belief was that mermaids were the souls of evil people reincarnated for punishment. Japan has a tradition of worshiping vengeful spirits, hoping they won't bring disaster to the people. Later, they turned the mermaid into a mummy, and it's been preserved ever since. You can now find it at Shokoji Temple in Wakayama, in a hall called Gakubu no Michi. Is it possible it's fake? We don't know, but the Japanese government has officially protected it as a cultural heritage, so it can't be studied freely anymore. In the 19th century, there's a book titled Ehon Sayoshigure, the picture book of the night rain. One of the illustrations shows a mermaid with horns on its head and a tail behind. It looks really ugly, a human head with a fish body. Quite terrifying, really. In addition to records in ancient texts, Japanese legends also mention mermaids, but most of them are seen as evil beings. Whenever a mermaid appeared, a major disaster like an earthquake would follow. This is somewhat similar to European beliefs that mermaids are symbols of disaster. But not all mermaid legends are bad. There's one positive story. It's said that eating mermaid flesh can grant immortality. This is one of Japan's most famous mermaid-related myths called Yao Bikuni. A bikuni is a female monk. The Yao Bikuni is a monk who lived to be 800 years old. The legend tells the story of a fisherman's daughter. One day, her father got lost while fishing and met a stranger. The stranger invited him to his home for a meal. The fisherman followed the stranger back to his house. Once they got to the stranger's house, the man went into the kitchen to cook. Curious, the fisherman peeked into the kitchen and saw the stranger cooking a mermaid. He was terrified when he saw that. When the stranger brought out the mermaid dish, he didn't dare to eat it. He urgently asked for directions home, hoping the stranger could show him the way back to the village. The stranger pointed him in the right direction and told him to take the dish home. When he got home, his wife refused to eat it, but his daughter, not knowing what it was, ate it. As a result, she gained a lifespan of 1,000 years. Her appearance stayed frozen at 18 years old. Later, she got married, but her husband passed away. She remarried, but her new husband died too. Everyone she knew eventually passed away. She felt like life didn't have much meaning anymore. So she decided to give 200 years of her life to the emperor, leaving herself with 800 years. She traveled all over Japan. After exploring the whole country, she returned to her hometown, where she passed away at a small temple at the age of 800. The story of Yao Bikuni is widely recorded across many regions of Japan. They mention when the Yao Bikuni visited their area, so the credibility of this legend is actually pretty high. Now, let's look at the Chinese mermaid legends. For example, in the Shanhai Jing Classic of Mountains and Seas, it mentions a fish called Lingyu. The description says it's a fish with a human face living in the sea. It has a human face, hands, and feet, but a fish's body, kind of like an axolotl. But does an axolotl really count as having a human face? If so, maybe it's just an axolotl after all. There's also another ancient Chinese text called Qia Wenji, Records of Herd Tales. It describes a beautiful mermaid in the East China Sea, with hair like a horse's tail and a fish tail for the lower half. Her scales had tiny hairs on them, but this description actually feels a little creepy. So these are the mermaid legends from around the world. You can definitely feel that the Asian mermaids are different from the European ones. The ones in Asia seem a bit scarier, while the ones in Europe feel a bit more human-like. Now, aside from the legends of mermaids, are there any actual sightings? The answer is yes, and not just once. For example, in 1967, near Schmain Island in Canada, a tour boat was filled with people enjoying the sunset. Suddenly, they spotted a half-naked woman sitting on a rock by the sea. She had golden hair, was topless, and had the lower body of a dolphin tail. Many people on the boat witnessed this. As soon as the boat docked, they reported seeing a mermaid. Initially, the locals were skeptical, but a week later, more people claimed to have seen the mermaid. The local government quickly launched a thorough investigation. Many locals even went out to search for the creature. Some even offered a reward of $25,000, saying anyone who could provide proof of the mermaid would receive the money. But after that, the mermaid was never seen again. In 2008, a group of people were camping near a river in South Africa. Suddenly, they heard a loud bang. Curious, they followed the river to investigate what had happened. They saw a woman in the river with long, jet-black hair and glowing, milky white skin. As they approached to take a closer look, the woman turned around and they were terrified. She had two bright red eyes. The woman appeared just as startled to see them and quickly dove into the water, disappearing from sight. This incident caused a significant stir in South Africa at the time, capturing widespread attention and sparking speculation. In 2013, a mermaid sighting was reported in Israel. There's actual video footage of this. Two young people were walking along the beach when they suddenly noticed something on a rock. They quickly grabbed a camera and started recording. When zooming in to get a closer look, the creature, resembling a mermaid, turned around and leaped into the sea, disappearing. This is one of the most convincing pieces of footage of a mermaid I've seen, but it's also possible that the creature was a seal or sea lion. The exact nature of the sighting remains unconfirmed. Later, the Israeli government offered a $1 million reward for anyone who could find the mermaid. To this day, it has yet to be located. So that's all the info on mermaids for now. Overall, it feels like there's no real physical evidence. So, do mermaids really exist? Right now, there are four main theories. 1. Mermaids as folklore. The first group believes mermaids are purely fictional, created by ordinary people for some purpose. But back in ancient times, when communication wasn't as convenient as it is today, mermaids were reported all over the world. What's more, the descriptions are surprisingly similar. Isn't that strange? 2. Mermaids as real animals. As for the second group, they believe mermaids are real and that they're actually a real animal, the dugong. Dugongs can grow up to 4 meters long. They're mammals but herbivores and swim very slowly. They float to the surface to nurse their babies, holding them in their flippers. From a distance, it might look like a white figure holding a child, kind of human-like. But here's the thing, dugongs don't have beautiful voices, so they're nothing like the enchanting songs of mermaids. And dugongs have no hair at all, which is totally different from the iconic image of a mermaid's flowing locks. That's why some people don't agree with this theory at all. 3. Mermaids as undiscovered creatures. The third group believes mermaids are a real species. We just haven't discovered them yet. After all, humans only understand about 5% of the ocean. It's highly possible that mermaids live in the other 95% that we haven't explored. If we follow creationism, then mermaids must exist. If we follow evolution, they could exist too, because within the Homo genus, it doesn't make sense for humans to be the only species. 4. Mermaids as extraterrestrials. The fourth group argues that mermaids are actually aliens. In both Sumerian and Egyptian civilizations, there are mentions of creatures with a human upper body and a snake-like lower body, which closely resemble mermaids. And as I mentioned earlier, the most typical mermaid in Greek mythology is the siren. The sirens are said to have originally had wings. They could fly, but after possibly making a mistake, they were punished by the gods. Their wings were broken, and they ended up in the sea, turning into sea monsters. One of the most fascinating things about mermaids is their ability to enchant with their song. It almost feels like a sonic weapon, or maybe even just using their mind to control others. It really gives off an alien vibe. So to sum it all up, Mermaids are both a mysterious and terrifying existence. Yet, according to legends, eating a mermaid can grant immortality. So if you were the one to find a mermaid, would you dare to face it? Would you even consider cooking and eating it? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts.